Okay. Good evening, guys. Welcome to another session of Roundabout. So Roundabout, to those who are new here, is a almost weekly Zoom podcast kind of thing that happens in the Literature Club, where we invite speakers on and they talk about anything they wish to in whatever format like. Today we have Ms. Gargi Chakraborty. She is a clinical psychologist, and her interests lie in the works of Sir Rabindranath Tagore, and she's going to be speaking about it now. So, to you, ma'am, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are very, very, happy to have you, and we're very excited for this session.
Thank you so much for having me over here. And as I was introduced already, I am Gargi Chakraborty and I'm a clinical psychologist. I am proud of being Bengali person. Why I mentioned this, because Kaviguru Rabindranath Tagore's writings that I'm going to, today's topic is hope over death. And Kaviguru's writings, as a Bengali, we have all learned it from childhood, and it's amazing in a way that it gives such inner strength. So let's not waste time. Let's start. Okay, so can I share the screen?
Yes, ma'am. I've enabled participants to share the screen, so I think you should be able to.
Sure. Yes, so the current scenario, as I have named the topic, Hope Over Death in the Light of Current Scenario, by Rabindranath Tagore, a reflection of his poets. This pandemic situation is creating a havoc in everyone's mind, and we all are in a very disturbed state of mind, like what is going to happen. Though we all know nothing will happen, but still, after day in and day out of hard work, especially medical students, the frontline people who are dealing and coping with such difficult state of mind, I thought that this would definitely give kind of motivation. To begin with, this whole topic, this hope, and that is reflected in writings of Kaviguru Rabindranath Tagore, it's based on awareness. And to talk about awareness, we need to know our conscious mind. It's the base of our very existence, be it internal or external. Our conscious mind, it's nothing but it's filled up with our experience. It focuses on our experiences and processes them to form our very own mental framework. And of course, as we all know, one of the biggest pillar of our conscious mind is hope. So as this year has begun and it has started showing its true colors, and since the very beginning of the year, we have seen so many things happening back to back. And as hopelessness is prevailing, we are struggling to find the light in the darkness, and the writings of Tagore soothes our mind. So as we are talking about Rabindranath Tagore's writings, it's today definitely we are talking about hope, and hope over grief or pain and death finally. But it's definitely a Pandora's box, and I have shared the reference after this discussion, this whole session. You guys can definitely refer back to those the references and find Rabindranath Tagore's writings in different genres of life. be it prayer, be it love, be it for nature, anything. Okay, coming back to our topic, just a little bit of introduction about Rabindranath Tagore. He is commonly known as Kaviguru or Gurudev, and he was born on 7th of May 1861 in Thakurbari, the ancestral home of Tagore's in Calcutta, like now Kolkata, but at that time it was Calcutta, the British India capital. And Tagore's were a very influential family at that point of time. And belonging to that family, Tagore has handled pain and grief from a very different standpoint. You guys might be thinking that why Tagore? There are so many poets in India and across the world. Why Tagore? Because Tagore existed at a certain point of time when the world was seeing pandemics. One of the biggest pandemics, the cholera pandemic, and the many other, like the world wars, many other things that this poet, this legend, he has gone through, and he has evolved. His writings are the reflections, like how to deal with that, we can definitely get to know. Coming back to his personal life, Tagore had to go through the pain of grief multiple times. The very first time he felt this pain of losing somebody, some loved one, a loved person, the most closest person is his mother. The death of his mother, Sharda Devi, when he was just 14. Eventually, in his life, he has seen the loss of many near and dear ones. And the very next experience was the death of his beloved friend, philosopher, and guide, his sister-in-law, Kadambari Devi. So Kadambari Devi was not only his friend, like when she was there, she was the inspiration behind many of Tagore's writings. And even after her death, she continued to be the inspiration. So when she died, Tagore wrote, "Beyond the bounds of life and death, there you stand, oh my friend." Despite misery and churning of the estranged heart, peace and bliss prevails, hopes galore. We will be talking about healing through Tagore's writings today. And from his writings, we have always found that consciousness, as I started today's discussion with, like conscious mind, consciousness is something which is free floating. And he always talked about conscious awareness. And for being a conscious awareness, and for being consciously aware, for being detached. Why detachment is important? Because to understand what is happening inside you, within you, any human needs to feel detached at some point of time. This is very important. Why? Otherwise, when we experience the negative or painful experiences of our life, we are so much engulfed into that, we cannot realize what's happening. And through this journey, actually, we grow. But the moment we are growing, along with that, we need an insight that shows us the light to move on in life. And that enlightenment comes from this detachment. Experience of consciousness is a journey from incomplete to complete. And this whole completeness, this feeling of this wholesome completeness, this comes from detachment. We will see more about detachment. To feel this and to feel it, we need to make the conscious mind unbounded, and then only we can feel it. As I mentioned earlier, that he lost many near and dear ones in his life. He also lost his wife. He lost his children at a very early age. So when he lost his youngest son in 1907, Rabindranath to cholera in India, describing his loss, Tagore wrote something which till date that touches our heart. I'll read out that. When his last moment was about to come, I was sitting alone in the dark in an adjoining room, praying intently for his passing away. to his next stage of existence in perfect peace and well-being. At a particular point of time, my mind seemed to float in a sky where there was neither darkness nor light, but a profound depth of calm, a boundless sea of consciousness without a ripple or murmur. I felt like a father who had sent his son across the sea, relieved to learn of his safe arrival and success in finding his place. I felt at once that the physical nearness of our dear ones to ourselves is not the final meaning of their protection. His words are so much inspiring. I won't say only inspiring, they touch our heart at the deepest level. A father who is losing his son, when at that very moment he is realizing that, yes, I'm losing the most dearest person, he, instead of crying, I'm not saying crying is bad. I'm not saying we don't need to go through the stages of grief, but this conscious awareness that as a father, he had that much, his writings give us that much strength that we can try considering this idea that a father who is sending his son across the sea and it's feeling relieved to learn of his safe arrival and success in finding his place. As if the father is waiting to get the news, okay, okay, my son actually finally reached, and this realization that the physical nearness, it's actually the importance is of physical nearness is not that much, where we actually get to know where our near and dear ones, their final protection is ensured. So then we can let go the importance, or let go to some extent the importance of physical nearness. When we see that person in peace, the experience of grief can be seen throughout Tagore's literature. Here, um, in Gitobitan Probashi 1916, Tagore mentioned, "Who says that I shall not remain in your mornings anymore? The same me shall join with you in all fun and frolic. You will call me by a new name and embrace me with fresh fervor, and I shall remain with you forever. So you need not remember me then, and look for me among the distant stars." Tagore's writings conceptualizes detachment, as I mentioned earlier, which is definitely a very essential element of well-being. It's not only from conscious awareness part, but also to understand our experiences. Our awareness comes when we can detach ourselves and observe and go through the journey. It's like a kind of metacognition, cognizing your cognitions. Cognitions are the mental processes. So when we can overall perceive what we are perceiving, we can learn from our experiences. We can understand our own mental processes. We can understand the pain that is generated through our experiences. Detachment helps in understanding all the incompleteness in consciousness by removing all the negative emotions intertwined with pain of loss and grief. So, from the writings of Rabindranath Tagore, we get to understand detachment as if we are learning it from the scratch, and we are moving on like from A to Z of conscious awareness, A to Z of detachment. That's why this is so much inspiring. Today, as death surrounds us and we struggle to find light in the darkness, the writings of Kaviguru soothes our mind. We feel somewhat healed when Tagore says death is not an extinguishing light. It's only putting out the lamp because the dawn has come. This very line is so much um, deeply rooted to our very existence. Anything happens to us, any dark moment. Um, I'm sorry. Is the meeting still continuing?
Yes, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay. Okay. So as I was saying, um, the, this line, this very line, that death is not extinguishing light, it is only putting out the lamp because the dawn has come. We consider anything that is ending, we consider it as the end of the world. We consider as if our life has come to complete meaninglessness. We can cry, we can choose to cry upon it, we can choose to feel hopeless, we can choose to feel anything. But once, if we can consider this, that this is just the new beginning, or this is just handling the thing in a way that, okay, this is not end of the thing, but it is just to begin with a new thing. It's just how we are managing the situation. So if we consider this philosophy that ending something or end of something is just not stopping the whole process. It may be just dimming the light so that we can enjoy the natural glow. We can enjoy the natural color of life. And that is what is meaningfulness. There comes the meaning of hope when we can consider the death or thanatophilia, fear of death, as not an extinguishing light. It can also be a beginning, a start, a fresh beginning, a start of the new day. So, as every day we do, as every night ends, we just put off the light and we start afresh the new day in the color of the bright sunlight. Tagore concluded that death has a meaning because of the existence of life. Again, this particular line is also very, very, very meaningful to the present day's context. Death is only meaningful because of the existence of life. Just as night comes and then day will come. Just as importance of day is there, importance of night will be there. Similarly, the importance of death is there because there is life. Life exists and also it's vice versa. Death exists, so life will also exist. Understanding this meaning may take a little time, but this is very, very, very relevant. He tried to find the meaning in the meeting and parting of life. He experienced the meaning of death by accepting its presentation through imagination. Tagore transformed thanatophilia, as I was mentioning earlier, into a dramatic and celebratory occasion called life through his literature. Finally, life to death and death to life get fused as life and death dance together. Tagore, Arupratam, Gitobitan, 1910. The references that I have shared with you is a complete collection of writings by Rabindranath Tagore, where not only this life and death concepts, as I mentioned earlier, there will be every shades and every genres of his writing. But if you really want to go through it, you can definitely refer back and read his writings. So as I was talking about hope and strength, I will just come to the conclusion with this beautiful lines as mentioned by Rabindranath Tagore. to like that is always a strength building uh, line. And it is in Bengali there is a very famous song, but I will read out the English version of that. Let me not pray to be sheltered from dangers, but to be fearless in facing them. So I would welcome queries and doubts. If you have any, please feel free to ask. This is a very concise discussion. This discussion regarding Rabindranath Tagore will never end, but I hope I could share some glimpse of it. So if you can please ask your queries.
So we'd like to now open the floor up for any questions. If you've got anybody's got questions, you can just unmute yourselves and ask, or you can put it up in the chat box and you can ask the question then as well. Any questions at all? Or even if you'd just like to add your thoughts, that's welcome as well. So please.
Build up with our own mental framework, own mental infrastructure. So when we experience life and anything that is stopping us from experiencing life to its full in all its beauty, as you said. So if you need to feel detached and if you have to understand life to its fullest, then one thing you need to know that you need to observe yourself. And to observe yourself, imagine a situation where, suppose you are an audience and you are seeing something from a distance. In everyday life, what do? We, any work that we do, we, after doing the work from a distance, sometimes we consider observing that work, that whether we have done in the way we expected it to do. So what happens when we do this observation? We get a chance to view it. If something is not falling into its place, if something is not going as we expected, you will say, where is the question of detachment coming? Detachment coming over here when we are observing from a distance. So we are actually detaching us and we can see. So there is no particular amount of how much we can detach, but there is definitely, if we regularly practice detachment, then what happens? We can understand the value of observing ourselves from a distance is so much, so huge that we can cope with our difficulties in our life and in life to its fullest. Good question. And I hope, Satvik, you got the answer. If not, you can ask.
Um, does anybody else have a question? Yeah, I think Kirti would like to ask something.
Yeah, hello. Nice listening to you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello,
So,
Kirti.
yes. So, I am also pretty deep into Tagore's poetic philosophy and the topics discussed. I just have a question over the things that you discussed. Practicing detachment in a family life, in
Yeah,
the
sure.
family, with
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
normal routine that we are going, we are carrying on, and this current scene around us, there are times when it becomes so difficult, and we do break down at the loss of near and dear ones. Or recently my friend lost her 17-year-old child. He had a congenital heart disease though, and it was known that he will pass away, but still she's finding it very difficult to cope up with the grief or whatever, or someone losing. So this detachment practice is, it it becomes very difficult when it impacts one very closely, so my question is that how
Definitely.
to do it daily, bit by bit. And I won't say I become an expert, but then how to cope up in severe cases like losing a son, a daughter,
Definitely.
a mother.
I will answer.
Yes,
I understood your
if
question.
you can, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you for such a beautiful question. It's such an
Thank
important
you so
and
much.
relevant question.
Yes, please.
Yes, Kirti, this detachment, it cannot be developed just in a day. It's as you asked, like how can we practice it every day so that it can help us in the long run? And when we lose any near and dear one, uh, with due respect to Rabindranath Tagore's writings and philosophies, we all of us, we don't need to reach that saint level, but if we can utilize those philosophies, we can put some implications of that in, and implement that in our life. How? When we lose some near and dear ones, we have to understand the basic philosophies of life, where everything is important. As I mentioned, there is importance of day, there is importance of night. If you remember, I mentioned Kaviguru's writings always reflect this thing that life and death dances together. So what does that mean? There is importance of darkness, so that the energy or the positivity that can prevail. All of us, we have to go through something that has started, that will end. So this, the beginning of everything is so beautiful, but when it comes to an end, it's a pain. Grief is a process. If we do not go through grief, what will happen is we may develop something that is not normal. Grief is a process where it has different stages. Initially, when we feel grief, to overcome grief, like if we are going through grief, what we have to do is understand that the process is very important. We cannot magically overcome grief, but to go through the process, actually what we need to go through is an emotional breakdown. We need to go through that stage of sadness, anger, bargaining, that feeling of loss. Everything will come. This is a journey. If we are human beings, we have to understand importance of all emotions, and that is what is life. It's not like, suppose a little kid, I'm giving you a very simple example so that you can understand. A little kid fears of vomiting. I'm not encouraging vomiting, but what I'm trying to say is, if sometimes the vomiting will take place, though it is painful, but the child will feel relieved after that. But with the fear of the vomiting, what will happen? The child will try to hold it, which may result to something much more dangerous or much more uh, painful, that he or she would not have dealt with if he would have let himself flow with the process. So, what Kaviguru tries to say through his writings is, understand that is so much full. If we expect that, am I audible? Hello,
Yeah,
am
I
I
missed a
audible?
part of you in between. It was not audible. Yes.
Okay, so sorry. If we are losing someone, it's not that the ideal situation is, it's not, I am mentioning again, it's not that we will not cry or go through the pain and we will be saintly. To reach a balanced level, we need to go through the process of grief. Then only we can come across and get over it. Otherwise, if we suppress, like, I won't cry, how can I cry? I won't express, how can I express? If these things are happening inside someone, that is problematic. If the person is going through the process of grief, then it is normal. But if it is getting elongated days after days, I think that person should consult with a mental health professional and it will help that person. It's not that easy to deal with the loss of a near and dear person.
Thank you very much. That was really insightful. So my takeaway is that the grieving is a process, and running away, it is also a part of the emotional. Any emotional meltdown is also a process. So without fearing, you should
Like,
face
just
it
as
and just.
positive emotions are there, negative emotions will also be there.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's helpful.
Um, would anybody else like to ask any questions? So, yeah, Yamini ma'am, I think would like to ask
Hi,
something.
Gargi. Yummy here. Um, hello. Hello. There's some problem with the connection, Anand. Hello.
Ma'am, I think it is at ma'am's end because,
Okay, right. So in that case, I'll probably just type it out.
yes, ma'am, that should be fine.
Okay.
I think I dropped out for a minute and I'm so sorry. Maybe some network
Yeah.
issues happened.
Hi, Gargi. Since you're
Hi,
back,
ma'am. Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for that very, very insightful talk. And you, as a mental health care professional, I very well know how you deal with patients struggling with the emotion of grief and the various techniques that we employ to help. And I guess the very pertinent point that you told was about how negative emotions are entailed in grief, and that needs to be appreciated as well as dealt with during grief therapy. So there are occasions where you would have seen that patients would be unwilling to abide by any of the assignments provided, and so what is understood is they are still dealing with the heavy emotions of grief, and hence just being in therapy is good enough and not doing something in therapy for them. And we also from a very mental health point of view need to understand that grief can be varied and is very, very person specific. There are occasions when individuals may not want to reach out at all, and most occasions most individuals are such who do not want help, and can self-soothe, can self-heal, and it's a time bound process, and then they can do it all by themselves based on their level of resilience and coping. So grief therapy from our end can never be forced upon someone, that's for sure. Yeah, that. And I also wanted to just bring to notice this very nice book by Deepak Chopra on life after death. And there he highlights the concept that life is not the opposite of death. Life is perennial, perpetual, and death is one event in life, just as birth. So, birth and death are the two opposites, not life. And life continues even beyond death. And it's nice because he brings in aspects of quantum physics as well, wherein he states that each body vibrates at a different frequency after death, which means to say that it is not perceivable to the naked eye, but there is still existence of form and life beyond death. So it's quite intriguing, and it's lovely that Rabindranath Tagore has been able to go through so many, losses in his life, not just one or two. And you've also
Yeah.
told me this wonderful relationship that he shared with his sister-in-law,
Yeah.
which is very hard to, put on paper or describe, because it loses its meaning if you tend to
Yes.
describe what relationship they shared. Yeah. So thank you
Yeah.
so much. I really liked your talk, and I wish we could have more emotions that could have been elaborated on. But all in all, thank you so much, and I'll go through all his writings after this. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am, for so much. It's so like you have given a definitely a very different understanding, and the writing that you mentioned. This life is actually life is beyond our understanding. Many a times we cannot compare life with death, and sometimes death, like as in the writings of Tagore, many a times it comes back that death is not end of everything. Death is not like end of the world or end of everything. Death is an occasion that will happen. So anything that starts will end sometimes, but life is beyond this birth and death. And death is happening, that doesn't mean life is ending or positivity is ending, meaningfulness and hope is ending. No, it's beyond um, the limits and boundaries. So to understand the meaningfulness, we have to make our conscious awareness boundless. That's what Rabindranath Tagore tries to imply.
Uh, if anybody else would like to come in. If anybody else wishes to speak, kindly unmute yourselves and we'll go ahead. If that's all, then I think we'll conclude this session. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. We've had a wonderful session, and there's a lot of things for us to take away from this. Uh, Before we sort of finally close this, a couple of notices. For those of you who've been with us before, I know we had said we'd be uploading our sessions onto YouTube. There have been a lot of delays because, the recordings are with different people and we've sort of not gotten around to putting all of it together. We will eventually put it up. We just require a little bit of time. And of course, these sessions will continue. So if you'd like to present, or you know somebody who'd like to present a small talk on anything literary, uh, you're welcome to contact us, and hopefully we'll be able to put a session together. Thank you, ma'am. It's been a wonderful session, and thanks
Thank you so much.
for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And I also had a wonderful time discussing about Rabindranath Tagore and life over death. This is very much relevant. Thank you.